Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's so nice to see you. It's so nice to see a full theater, even though we're so close to spring break. Thanks, everyone, for being here in the theater, and welcome to those of you who are joining on the live stream as well. My name is Sarah Rafson. I'm the Associate Director of Public Programs here at the GSD, and on behalf of the Public Programs team, which includes Matt Smith and Raquel Rivera, we are thrilled to welcome you to tonight's lecture, Notes on Time by Minsuk Cho. So, mentioning the live stream, and to those of you who are in the audience too, we do have live captioning available if it helps you follow along. The instructions are on the screen, and it's a fairly simple process, but if you have any issues activating this feature, please consult our colleagues in the AV booth or through the chat in the live stream. Before we begin the lecture, I wanted to take a moment to let you know about two events that are coming up after spring break. On Tuesday, March 25th, Maurice Cox, the Emma Bloomberg Professor in Residence of Urban Planning and Design, along with the former Chicago Mayor, Lori Lightfoot, will discuss what happens when designers share the power of design with marginalized and disenfranchised communities and begin to reverse decades of disinvestment to reactivate neighborhood cores in the south and west sides of Chicago. And then after that, on Friday, March 28th, Jorge Otero Pylos will discuss his approach to art as a method of experimental preservation, and he'll argue for the importance of imagining a future for the built environment that's centered on mutual care. So you can RSVP, you can view the live streams, and you can learn more about those events and many more on the GSD's website. And now, please join me in welcoming Grace Law, the chair of the Department of Architecture, who will introduce tonight's event. Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us. In honor of our guest, I will introduce myself also by my Korean name, Na Eun-young. 제 이름은 Na Eun-young입니다. That's what you get for many Saturday Korean school classes. Thank you really for joining us this evening. From K-pop to K-drama, from K-beauty to K-barbecue, from the Academy Awards to the Nobel Prize in Literature, it's really hard to miss the Hallyu, or the Korean wave, energizing global arts and culture. From here at the GSD, it's only natural to wonder how architecture plays into South Korea's reputation as a major cultural exporter. Tonight, we welcome Minsuk Cho, esteemed Korean architect and founder of the Seoul-based firm Mass Studies. Through architecture, writing, and exhibitions, Minsuk considers design in terms of socio-political history and urbanism, and his work is strongly rooted in Korea's captivating spirit and complex heritage. So just to set the stage with historical context, for centuries the Korean peninsula suffered under Chinese and Japanese occupation, and this struggle for geopolitical dominance threatened to extinguish Korean culture and identity. Former GSD faculty and alums John Hong and Jinhee Park, in their 2012 GSD exhibition on Korean architecture, noted that the danger of erasure of physical and societal structures by outside forces created an unusual cultural condition in which nostalgia becomes irrelevant because there is no coherent whole to reference. In the 20th century, when South Korea emerged from World War II and the Korean War urgently needing new infrastructure and buildings, this rapid architectural production often was not matched by theorization. With Korea's mountainous geography compressing its population into urban centers, the country recently has become associated with a dense urbanity in an endless process of hasty repair and self-transformation. Minsuk has described Korea's condition as both intellectually thrilling and sociologically concerning. As a first-generation Korean American, I have witnessed the swift transformation of South Korea from a hermit kingdom into the rising tiger of an economic powerhouse, and I've found it breathtaking. Perhaps the country's most dramatic feat of K-beauty is Seoul itself, with its population now at 10 million. While I have thrilled to see the city quickly become the so-called miracle on the Han, I have noted that its aesthetic makeover has not always recognized the value of its earlier architecture. I appreciate Minsuk's ways of dealing with the design challenges of Seoul, where, as he says, progress and chaos become inseparable. The fluidity of Seoul's urban fabric correlates with the state of Korean architecture today. There are two terms for architect, gunchuk-ga, with the suffix ga, aligning the architect with artistic world-building visionaries like painters and composers, and gunchuk-sa, with sa signifying professional certification by the government like doctors and lawyers. Architecture was an engineering discipline in Korea until the 1980s, then was recast for its own cultural and aesthetic field when education reforms overlaid Western thinking on traditional modes of spatial production. Minsuk exemplifies this transitional generation through his cultural and disciplinary hybridity, having trained first at Seoul's illustrious Yonsei University and then at Columbia's Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. After working with James Polshek and Rem Koolhaus, he partnered with James Slade, then in 2003 founded his own practice in Seoul. Min's work in Korea oscillates between two modes. Spatially, he negotiates with the city's social and economic intricacies, while temporally, he conjoins tradition and contemporaneity. A prime example is his new expansion to the Pace Gallery in Seoul, one of his many engagements with the art world, which foregrounds the gallery's stable of artists while hosting new live programming. Min and I recently walked his deft interweaving of exhibition and performance spaces, open-air interior courtyards, and a tea house. And the design provides sanctuary from the bustling streets of Seoul, which he calls the impatient city. Min often anchors his buildings and pavilions with courtyards to curate circulation and cultivate collective intimacies amidst geographic and temporal fragmentations. Outside Korea, Min reconciles his heritage of typologies with the spatial, historical, and sociopolitical particularities of each site. For London's Serpentine Pavilion in 2024, he reformulated the traditional Korean madang courtyard into a central void within non-hierarchical archipelagos. And these are of built spaces with diverse program. The pavilion prioritizes interacting with each architectural space instead of entering a single object and provides a refreshing counterpoint to earlier pavilions. In 2014, Min was awarded the prestigious Golden Lion Prize for his Venice Biennale Pavilion, in which he sought a most ambitious political reconciliation in his overture to North Korean architects, inviting them to converse through architecture. Such gestures affirm that Min's architectural works burrow beneath the purely aesthetic to access deep veins of social history. As South Korea continually intensifies its cultural momentum, Min's conversations through architecture provide a creative lens through which to make sense of Korea's contemporary condition while sharing Korea's layered and thriving architecture with the world. Please join me in welcoming Minsuk Cho.
Thank you, Grace. 나은영 학장님, for such a generous and kind introduction. Also, thank you, Sarah Rafson and her team, this impeccable preparation to get me here, and thank you for everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Before we begin, the GST asked me to pick a music, so you were actually listening my DJ work, actually. And it was a request. I found it very unusual and very exciting. And it's actually what we picked was quite obvious one, because I had a soundtrack for my on one of my project, which is a Serpentine Pavilion last year. And it was made by Jang Young-gyu, which is a You can say he's a Bong Joon-ho of a contemporary music scene here, meaning that Bong Joon-ho is like his own genre. He cannot, I mean, you see this almost like an elevator music that when we ask, design a pavilion music, and he's like, oh, okay, traditionally there's a genre for that, Korean pavilions, where you sing enchanted nature and love. It usually is a bittersweet things, and then actually he sampled, and it's kind of this, last 3 decades, he has been a very amazing force that kind of opens up the new possibilities of different influences. And you can see like NPR Tiny Desk concert, or you'll see him like Korean student, like Inalchi sing and all that. Yeah, you can also inform other people here. Anyway, but it was interesting that the pavilion music, we asked him 1 soundtrack, but he made 2 musics, and he thought maybe there's a 5 months period. There's a summer, starts from summer and then becomes a fall. So it maybe has to be a 2 music, seasonal music. So somehow it kind of resonates with what I was trying to kind of touch upon under this time thing. Is according to math studies. Let's see how does it work? This one. Okay, so yeah, usual kind of presentation of a beginning to end narrative in architecture, whether it's a redemptive triumph or tragic failure. I'll rather organize it as a kind of a complex process and frame our works as a moment within an ongoing sequence of actions. So position within the perpetual befores and afters we have to contribute to and be part of meaningful temporal continuum that involves with what we call ecologies of nature and culture, both and everything in between. This attempt could be quite rewarding, although architecture can take a long time to construct and nurture. Yet being fragile, we also know that it can be destroyed in no time. Architecture can be on either side, though it seems to appear more often one side than the other, maybe. Time is the most probably common tool and the most useful tool for architecture. Time is also an important ingredient in architecture. We understand this relatively well as our practice is deeply rooted in a culture where fermentation is a fundamental culinary tradition. For example, same batch of kimchi takes on various time-specific names as it ages, starting from 겉절이, which is a fresh, unfermented, spicy salad-like state, to 묵은지, an aged, deeply fermented, tangy, and pungent state. It can range from fast food to slow food, with accompanying recipes that allow them to be indiscriminately enjoyed as they are, regardless of age. Time, both as an ingredient and tool, can be explored in divergent ways. Architecture begins with site visits, which typically provide 2 kinds of inspirations. The first comes from a beautiful site, whether for its nature, culture, or both. The inspiration then becomes how not to ruin what is there, and instead sustaining it and coexisting with beautifully imagining some sort of fiction, a fairy tale. Though I'm not going to go into detail, this is just a prologue. I'm presenting what we consider as one of the most beautiful yet challenging sites that we worked on. Our project for black vinegar production in southern tip of Korean peninsula in the Boseong region. However, more often encountering new site feels like walking into a crime scene or war zone, the opposite of something beautiful. In this case, inspiration takes on a role of detective or documentarian, driven by curiosity about the past. How did it happen? As if being handed a great riddle with a desperate yet optimistic search for ways of engagement. One must look back in order to move forward. Mostly, it's a complex combination of both. So now, if time permits, we will explore more or less 9 crime sites, each addressing specific notes on time. First, compressed. The term compressed history is widely used in my country to describe the massive dynamic political and economic transformations that has unfolded in South Korea. And the Han River is at the center of Seoul might be a good example. Until mid-20th century, this vast natural territory featured ever-fluctuating boundaries between water and land, set against dramatic rocky landscape both within and around it. This scenery was depicted by 18th century master painter Gyeomjae Jeongseon, known for his realistic, though though now unimaginably romantic, on-site depictions of the Han River created from his boat trips. This was once a Zomia territory inhabited by boat makers and fishermen. However, around the late 1960s, the river had to be controlled due to rapid urban expansion. This dramatic rocky landscape had to be flattened to create rubbles for constructing riverbanks. As a result, this unique landscape and the life it supported disappeared completely. The Seoul Thermal Power Plant, Korea's first power station, was established in 1931. It underwent several upgrades with two plants, Plant 2 and 3, added in the 50s, 4 and 5 replaced, early 70s. Around this time, the flattening of the landscape quickly followed. Riverbanks was created on both sides and utilized as a high-speed roadways, simultaneously accompanied by the construction of apartment slabs and later replaced with towers. Today, the Han River is vast but difficult to access, challenged by two layers of endless barricades of infrastructure and buildings on both sides. By the beginning of 21st century, Seoul has grown so significantly that Dangin-li, once a peripheral territory of the city, had become quite dense sub-center. The old power plants from the 1970s need to be upgraded with the larger, cleaner power stations. An ambitious plan was conceived to build a one-of-a-kind underground power station, topped with a public park situated next to the older plants. In 2018, we won a two-stage open competition to convert Power Plant 4 and 5 into public cultural facility. The brief asked the proposer to preserve Plant 5 as an industrial heritage with flexible uses, while Plant 4 would undergo significant modification. All machinery in Plant 4 would be removed to create a large underground exhibition space and a multi-purpose gathering area, repurposing the turbine hall on the ground level, and so on. We saw this task as potentially the last opportunity to create a significant public space with cultural ambition along the Han River. However, unlike the Tate Modern by the South Bank in London, this site lacks the urban-to-river connection. There is also no ground surface in front of the site, hardly a view of the river at the ground level, obstructed by flyovers. It's 4-meter-high structure. Our idea was to create a podium that connects the two separate roofs of the turbine halls, creating a public plaza 18 meters above ground. This plaza is accessible by escalators and network of 3D promenades from the ground level. Equipped with large elevators, the podium can be transformed with urban props such as food trucks. The podium's two river-facing edges, a combined total length of 200 meters, offer a majestic view of Miracle of the Han River and the Yeouido Island, once nicknamed Manhattan of Seoul. Yeouido, originally a delta, was transformed in 1968 into an ambitious showcase of northern Korean modernity, featuring National Assembly building set against backdrop of high-rises. The luscious entity closer to the site is Bamseom Island. Once home to as many as 1,000 people in the last century, the island was blasted and demolished to nothing above the river. Within just 100 days, the military used the rubble to transform Yeouido Delta into an city, into riverbank spanning 7 kilometers in circumference. Remarkably, this sacrifice Bamseom Island has grown back to 6 times to its original size because now it's controlled by 2 large dams on either end. The Han River is less of a river, more of a static lake-like body. Then this slow flow has caused heavy sedimentation over the river rocks and still continues to grow today. So this regeneration is not a narrative of Mother Nature's resurrection or healing power, but rather a mutant-like condition, an unintended consequence of human intervention. However, it has attracted numerous migratory birds, leading to Bamseom's designation as a World Ramsar Site in 2012, recognizing its ecological significance. In fact, in 2015, we won an invited competition to design a pontoon structure, the Bamseom Ecological Observation Deck, in front of the power plant for the bird watchers. Although the construction documents were completed within 1 year, the project has been on hold due to political changes. We remain hopeful it will be revised as a counterpart for Dangin-li, Podium and Promenade, prepared as inventive examples of creating a public ground where actual ground hardly exists. One sits 18 meters above ground, while the other floats on the river surface, accommodating a 9-meter fluctuation in water levels. Okay. Above the podium, the planned 4 boiler is removed and its remaining structure repurposed as a hyper pavilion, what we call, featuring the original maintenance catwalk appropriated into viewing decks. On the ground level, Turbine Hall 4 is converted into black box theater and Turbine Hall 5 is preserved. 2 linear spaces can be connected by raising their vertical lift doors, creating a 130-meter long space, which further expands into a 120-long linear outdoor additional plaza with underground parking below, resulting in a combined 200-meter-long indoor-outdoor space, ideal for large music events, maybe markets, and other possible scenarios. We call this project a Found Fun Palace and said to be completed in 2 years. Second, afterthoughts. Seoul Inner Ring Road is 40-kilometer long high-speed road, vehicle road on the northern side of Seoul. It was completed in 1995 during a period of rapid and exponential growth in private car ownership. To minimize the construction costs, 23-kilometer long portion of built over public territories, including existing roads and small rivers, as elevated structures or as tunnels piercing through mountains. Although the motivation for this massive endeavor was to streamline time or speed, a rather single-minded one, I was quite fascinated by the encyclopedic result of the accidental urban spaces created as byproducts or afterthoughts. I took this picture in 1999. It felt like a great covered urban space of Lina Bobadi's MASP, but maybe elongated in 200 times longer. To give you a better context, until the beginning of the democratic regime in the mid-90s, Seoul showed little interest in designing public spaces, as such spaces were often seen as igniting political protest. Yet urban spaces emerged nonetheless. In 2019, we won an open competition for social housing designed as a social incubator for young adults, recently out of school with a maximum stay of 8 years. The site is located not far from where the photo was taken 26 years earlier by the Hongjaecheon stream, just 3 kilometers away also from power station. This is from our first visit to the site. It has transformed into a brutalist Arcadia, I would call it, with lush water vegetation and schools of large carps swimming along busy bicycle path, populated with a very fit and healthy people. The site for this social housing is initially designed as a site for a water pump station. Used only a few hours a year during flood emergencies, such pump stations serve as a backup urban reservoirs in the ever more unpredictable climate conditions are scattered across small rivers throughout the city. Around this time, Seoul's Social Housing Bureau was looking into an imaginative way to intensify the use of potential sites to integrate public infrastructure with housing. This brilliant afterthought was a way to bring young adults to the city center as dwellers, despite the ever-increasing cost of housing. The project includes 96 studio apartments, all south-facing with balconies, the common living rooms and the laundry rooms connected by open stairs on each floor. The north side, facing the brutalist Arcadia, will feature a youth center and co-working spaces spread across 3 levels, and the roof park on 3 levels. These spaces will be accessible to and shared by larger public, the neighborhood community, as this building is designed to be hikeable from both sides, leading to a 7th-floor roof garden with the panoramic views. This design does not include car parking, offering only bicycle spaces and large open arch area for public use, such as for weekly food market. A massive 20-meter deep pit for the reservoir has been already prepared for quite some time. It went through many versions, but finally 2-year construction schedule will begin this spring. I think it's number 3. The early stage of Korean modernity coincided with colonization, a 35-year-long Japanese occupation that lasted until World War II. The voluntary pursuit of modernity began after the Korean War in 1953, emerging as a post-war reconstruction effort across two separate countries, North and South Korea. I curated an architecture exhibition about this tumultuous narrative under the direction of Rem Koolhaas's mandate of absorbing modernity between 1914 to 2014 for the Korean Pavilion at the Venice Biennale in 2014. The exhibition, titled Crow's Eye View, the Korean Peninsula, borrowed its name from architect turned poet Lee Sang-'s serial poem. Born in 1910, during the first year of the Japanese occupation, Lee Sang lived only 26 years. Trained as an architect with admiration for Le Corbusier and Charles Perriand, he abandoned architecture in his early 20s after his study to become a mythical figure in the early 20th century Korean literature. If a bird-eye view is understood as an all-encompassing, quintessentially modernist way of looking, Lee Sang-'s title for his serial poem, Crow's Eye View, initially appearing as a spelling mistake, was the intended title. In Chinese, the crow resembles a character for bird but lacks a single stroke at the eye's location. It's probably because crows appear as a bird without eyes. Lee Sang may have wanted to say there is a subject's gaze in his camouflage buried by the darkness in his time and unrecognized. Or he may have wanted to replace the generic bird with a specific kind of bird view expressed in his fragmented, cryptic serial poems composed of numbers, diagrams, sentences with or without space, etc. His work obviously had a connection with the European Dadaist poetry at the time. Later in the mid-20th century, another Korean architect admired Le Corbusier, Kim Jung-up. In his photograph, Kim stands at the center of the back row with Ioannis Xenakis on the left and Balkrishna Dosh in the front row. Kim worked in Le Corbusier's Paris office for 4 years until 1956. Upon returning Korea, he became a pioneering modernist architect. This is one of his early work, completed in 1961, the French embassy in Seoul, considered a masterpiece of Korean modernism. The embassy complex featured a cascading triptych composition. At the top, ambassador's residence, one level below, the pavilion with the ambassador's office above pilotis, and another level down, annex for the consular activities. Upon entry, the three buildings with distinct eaves unfolded dynamically against the sky, creating small acropolis with an architectural promenade on Chungmuro Hill, surrounded at the time by modest one-story wooden houses. Over the next 60 years, significant changes occurred. Initially built for 5 staff members, the complex expanded ad hoc to accommodate over 100 staff. The most adventurous part, pavilion's cantilevered curved roof, nearly collapsed in the mid-70s and was rebuilt in a tragically compromised way. The annex underwent a series of unrecognizable alterations. Meanwhile, the surrounding city transformed dramatically, with low-rise houses around the hill replaced by 16-story high-rises. The Han River, 3 kilometers away, once visible from the ambassador's residence, now is unimaginable due to canyon-like urban conditions surrounding the embassy complex. Our collaboration with the Korean-French architect Yoon Tae-hoon and his Paris-based firm Satie focused on 2 main tasks: restoring Kim Jung-up's pavilion and expanding the workspace to 4 times the original building area. Our challenge was to play a supporting role into the significant historical building while accommodating new demands at a much larger scale. The pavilion was reconstructed to create an original central staircase, complete with a water feature in the pilotis space, guided by few remaining drawings, black and white photographs, and old films. After its completion, gathering was held at the Kim Jung-up's apprentice, now in their 70s and 80s. The event coincided with the moving announcement of the French government official designation of the pavilion as a Kim Jung-up pavilion. For the new additions, we introduced two elements. First, we replaced the unrecognizable annex building with La Jetée, a two-story, 16-meter-long horizontal building with the same sectional relationship as the old annex. It houses the most public functions, such as a visa service, meetings, and exhibition space, and so on. Second, we designed 10-story tower containing high-security workspaces. This vertical volume mediates between original structures of the complex and the surrounding towers, offering a new intermediate scale and enhancing visibility from outside. In plan, the two new buildings relate with two original structures, each in distinct direction. La Jetée adopts the same 4.5 meters square grid as a pavilion module. It was impossible not to consider another iconic work by Kim Jung-up, 31-story Samil building, which was recently restored. When it was built in 1970, it was the tallest skyscraper in Korea. However, the completion of the building marked the end of Kim's first intense period of engagement in Korea, spanning 14 years, as he had to return to Paris in exile for 10 years due to his relationship with the military government. Paired with the Samil overpass in this picture, these two elements share the same commemorating the date of Korea's independent movement, March 1st, Samil, becoming the symbol of the explosive beginning of urbanity of that time, one stretching vertically, the other horizontally. From the Samil building, it's evident that Kim Jung-up was not only influenced by Le Corbusier, but also notably inspired by Mies van der Rohe. It was an era when the few pioneers from the regions outside of architecture centers drew multiple sources to meet diverse demands, and Kim Jung-up's legacy was a lot more complex than being in Le Corbusier's annotations. La Jetée, which means breakwater as an infrastructural element, resonates with the Samil overpass in its horizontality, although at a much more intimate scale. Also equally intimate, the 10-story tower resonates with the Samil building, perhaps as an interpretation of a modernity, what used to explode vertically and horizontally half century ago as a repurposed miniature. Unlike the curtain walls enveloping the Samil building, the new tower references a structural expression of Kim Jung-up's brutalist concrete structures, reimagined as a brutalist steel form with exposed welding marks. Also, the pavilion's precast concrete panel finish has been reinterpreted in the new building with dark wood patterns, precast UHPC panels. Eaves was the defining feature of the original ensemble, and our new building responds to this in distinct ways. First, it sunshades on the tower's two sun-facing sides. Second, through La Jetée's large, inviting canopy for visitors and its rooftop, which serve as an artificial ground for outdoor events. And third, framing a specific view. Kim Jung-up made several sketches over black and white photographs of his completed building, using blue markers to draw over the sky. The eaves, like Henri Matisse's scissor blade, cut the sky into dynamic shapes as he walked through his architecture promenade. Today, with a vertical backdrop of a city that has evolved over 60 years, this linear spatial narrative has become fragmented and impossible. Despite it all, at the entrance of La Jetée, with its eave above, we have created a one moment reminiscent of Kim's experience, making the surrounding towers disappear and revealing only his building and the sky. Perhaps this is the crow's eye view of the place as it can exist now. Number four, okay. The cultural ecosystem of South Korea has evolved dramatically. It began in Chungmuro, once known as the Hollywood of Seoul, in the old city center in the 1950s. Film was the most popular form of entertainment, peaking in the late 60s with many legendary theaters, cinemas in this area. Marquees were often filled with the masses lined up with the new movie opening days. It was an urban experience. However, it struggled when home TV became more widespread. The late 1990s marked a fascinating moment, both challenges and opportunities for Korean cinema. First, an open, democratic government encouraging free expression, and many of the now globally recognized directors emerged from this era as young independent filmmakers. Second, this period coincided with a global economic shift that reorganized various cultural ecosystems as larger industries. All theaters with the bigger screens and louder sound systems were replaced by multiplexes, and often with the shopping malls, bringing larger audiences back, however, offering more introverted pseudo-urban experience. In 2001, while I ran a practice with James Slade in New York, we collaborated with the Kim Kwang-soo in Seoul on the small task of repurposing underused subway passage in Chungmuro into what the Seoul City Cultural Department called Cinema Gallery. This city's initial motivation was some kind of district branding, transforming an underground passage into an area adorned with the movie posters for visitors coming for the 2002 World Cup. Our designated user was the Independent Filmmakers Association, mostly young, primarily female group with ambition much larger than that of the cities. They demanded using this opportunity to create a space for their community to engage in various film-related activities. Within this 6-meter wide, 70-meter long subway passage, we managed to fit a linear montage for diverse uses, including a 50% theater that could open up when not in use. The small theater space was quite heavily utilized, and I was amazed that so many indie film festival categories could exist. The space also included in the archive of obscure experimental films and viewing lounges well before YouTube and smartphones. Additionally, there was a digital filmmaking classrooms, quite new at the time, with back then state-of-the-art equipment. It became much more than just walls with movie posters. And this almost guerrilla-like operation, driven by tight schedule deadline to finish World Cup opening, I mean, that's how it happened somehow. By 2011, as Korean film industry expanded globally, group of people that included directors Park Chan-wook, Old Boy, Bong Joon-ho, Mickey 17, have you seen it? Advocated and demand from Seoul City's dedicated cinematheque complex more proper venue for independent film in Chungmuro. By this time, Chungmuro was undergoing redevelopment with the taller buildings and much higher land prices. Still, the city recognized the importance of nurturing the cultural ecosystem for film in this historically significant part of the city. So while the city purchased a smaller site than desired, there was a possibility for a tall tower. This required us to contain new complex in a vertical form. We call it a montage 425. It consists of 4 open volumes and 5 enclosed volumes stacked alternately with 60-meter vertical space, 40 meters above ground and 20 meters below. The 5 closed volumes house 3 theaters, a workroom and rooftop theater. The 4 open spaces in between serve as a lobby cafe, library exhibition space, a lecture hall, and an office. Each one has its own unique character, like 4 stacked marquees, each supporting different social aspects of film. It has been 7 years since we won the competition, and the building will be completed in a few months this year. 23 years ago, we designed a 70-meter long horizontal subway passage, and soon we will have a 60-meter tall vertical space. While underground subway passages and spaces within typical towers contain a certain spatial qualities as non-places, in both cases, I think we made a quite rich spatial montages to adapt to 2 typologically challenged urban conditions and sustain the same evolving community in Chungmuro. The next project is about religion. It's even closer to the old center of Seoul, 100 meters away from Changgyeonggung Palace. Won Buddhism is a native modern religion founded in Korea in 1916. It has approximately 100,000 followers in South Korea, and Wonnam congregations consist of about 250 people. Won Buddhism is a small modern religion, was 1960, yeah, I said it before, right? And this subsect of Zen Buddhism consider one or circle as both guiding principle and symbol for understanding the world. As an agnostic, I wasn't quite very familiar with this belief, yet I found it interesting to see the contemporary awareness, such as a concept like circularity or circular economy, resonate behind this religion now. Here's our first encounter with the former temple, which had functioned for half century and was awaiting reconstruction due to aging. Surrounding it, all epochs of Seoul converged in a cacophonous mix of dramatically varied scales, architecture types, construction method, and materials. Our task was to create an urban ensemble of 4 buildings, each with distinct functions, across 3 sites within this Seoul context. Amid 14-story towers lining the main road, a fragment of an old hill barely survived, providing access to the old alleyway fabric hidden behind the towers, revealing trace of the past. The first site, once a small house, was transformed into a 3-story annex building. It served as a meditation school and pop-up space. Right now, it's a bookstore, acting as an interface with the larger public. Ascending the step along the perimeter of the new annex, one encounters a wall with the stairs leading to the main temple. For a religion that strongly emphasizes the meditation and advocates a close relationship with the world, what they call an everyday religion, it was clear to us that we had to balance two seemingly contradictory goals, separation and connection, to support activities in both stillness and movement simultaneously. Among the two adjacent sites, the largest site is for the main temple, Dharma Hall, and Inhaewon Donor Memorial, while the other is for monastery. A deliberate strong north-south axis was imposed, with the Dharma Hall to the north and the Inhaewon Donor Memorial, a traditional hanok designed by On Ji-eum. On the south, between them lies a madang, a courtyard of domestic scale. Together, these spaces can form one unified area. It's a space suitably secluded, yet also allows two other buildings, the monastery to the east and the annex to the west, to remain in dialogue. Beautiful ginkgo tree, once stood by the old temple since its inception, was preserved in the corner of the front yard. We wanted to keep this tree as a practice of temporal continuity, recognizing that not only humans but also other living beings play a role as a protagonist here. Later, I learned about performance titled Land by Guatemalan artist Regina Jose Galindo, and I was quite surprised to see some similarities, even though this political artwork addresses the massacre in her country decades ago. Through a tall doorway and a commemorative space used as a foyer, you enter the Dharma Hall, 2-story, 250-seat space. Dramatic light projected directly from above is enhanced by conical shape of the space. Here one encounters what we call one space, a 9-meter tall steel wall, 18 millimeters thin, with a circular opening suspended from the ceiling. In a sealed position for meditation or Sunday morning services, one experiences constant changes brought out by the movement of the sun, or movement in stillness. Below the rear of the main sanctuary, there is a space with a height of 14 meters, enshrining the tablets of those who have departed. Both from Joseon Dynasty era, this old map, Seoul map, and acupuncture chart resemble each other in that they both were understood as a living organisms with a network of floors, a cyclical system. Half century ago, the main temple was situated on the apex of Gentle Hill, surrounded by 1-story wooden houses with a view of the nearby palace. This was a genius loci of the temple site. Today, none of it can be experienced due to the disruptive urban changes. The main temple was only accessible from one corner, while the rest led to dead ends. What initially began as a major organ transplant, replacing the old main temple, became more complex. We took on the additional challenge of unclogging the arteries with the goal of no dead ends, no dead spaces between buildings. This, what can be called urban acupuncture, require more than just an architectural effort. It became a social process. The congregation had to communicate and patiently negotiate with the neighbors to ensure continuous circular flow of movement around the main temple, making it accessible from all 7 surrounding alleyways, connecting with the diverse lives surrounding it. The most dramatic part of the process occurred with a change in ownership of the plot of the west side. Change it, like after 1 year construction began. So parking lot to Children's Cancer Care Center. So to accommodate their wish to better connect with the Medical University campus site on the north, significant changes were made. Although we already finished the basement, we changed quite a bit, and it kind of took a lot longer. The alleyway circulation expands 3-dimensionally as an architectural promenade, or path of enlightenment, as they have named it, with moments of stillness in movement, such as a prayer room at the top of the Dharma building, offering a view of the palace. Another key still moment is the highest point, the monastery rooftop, which unfolds narrative of all the urban elements from different times, almost like the end credit of a movie. In fact, our Serpentine Pavilion last year, titled Archipelagic Void, was exploration of the same idea, addressing the polyphony of diverse peripheral opportunities. As Umberto Eco suggests in the open work, openness allows for various forms of engagement and interpretation through audience participation, functioning a kind of chance operation rather than prescribing or imposing a singular linear narrative. In both cases, we explore this concept in the most site-specific way possible, with an undefined center space at the center. The madang, the versatile space where the unexpected happens. However, the difference with the temple's hyperspecific nature is that the Serpentine Pavilion, Archipelagic Void, while it is site-specific to the Kensington Gardens, also had to be siteless for its future, unknown location. So we create the possibility of recombining 5 islands into 120 configurations. Instead of complete utopia, we aim for an incomplete utopia, borrowing the word of Eduard Glissant from the Archipelago Conversation with Hans-Ulrich Obrist. 2 months ago, I visited the pavilion's second landing site to choose a specific location and new configuration. As the second spot is not the final destination, we are fortunate to demonstrate this incompleteness 3 times, it seems. Number 6. It's okay? Yeah. From the center of the city to the edge before you leave Seoul, we're going to go down south. Once reclaimed that flat farmland, the Magok district has evolved into a sub-center for R&D since 2007. Likely the last large-scale tabula rasa development within Southwest Seoul, with its dense low-rise building fabric shaped by proximity to Gimpo Airport, the area quickly filled with office buildings. Amidst this rapid development, we are asked to design a small park together with the Contemporary Art Museum at the intersection of 2 linear green pedestrian accesses. We began by proposing pedestrian movement in arc formations as a shortcut through the rectilinear park, serving as a counterpart to the rigorous Cartesian grid of the new city. These shortcuts define 3 mounds, shaping the park's layout. As its center, the park becomes a quieter space with gentle landforms with trees that shield it from views and noise of traffic along its edges. The 4th mound is a museum. Its 70-meter-long curved concrete wall faces other mounds within the park, features a shallow arch, 3.3 meters high with a 27-meter span. This serves as a dual purpose, an inviting entry welcoming museum visitors and functioning as a cloud bridge, a park infrastructure designed to attract park users to the roof above. In good weather, the stepped rooftop becomes very lively. For the exhibition space, we were initially asked to create 3 spaces with different heights. However, recognizing the ever-changing nature of the contemporary art, we suggest a future-proof flexible space, but with specificity. The result is a column-free quarter-oval shaped plan with varying heights, starting from 3.3 meters at the arch entry and culminating in 10-meter-high, 20-meter-wide wall. The space can be sensibly divided and reconfigured using non-structural walls. However, this flexible space induces specific responses instead of being neutral. For example, the largest wall at the far end inspired many artists somehow competitively producing their largest work ever they have done. And Egon Min or Donna Huanca. And also, another interesting outcome has been a monthly visit for Lululemon Brigade for yoga sessions. I mean, I don't know what to make of it, but I think it's a good that architecture is an agent for bringing different crowd, and sometimes with bloody, gory paintings with this beautiful bodies, men and women lined up. In good weather, also, they go out and become more showy. So also, somehow become this. I think it's more like a very exclusive club. Yeah, they do it so rigorously now, Instagram and all. The rooftop has also become an outdoor movie theater, and also park has become a library place for markets and so on. They use it quite well. One of the architectural challenges was emphasizing the building's scaleless monolithic character, which we believe would somehow complement amidst a sea of homogeneous assemblies of glass and metal panels of uniform height and built simultaneously. To achieve this, we executed single on-site pour for the perimeter walls, which reaches up to 11 meters high, avoiding horizontal cold joints. We have 2 vertical joints instead. The actual pouring was indeed a choreographic process that heavily involved fluid mechanics and treated architecture as really a time-based art. Now we're going down to Daejeon, 1 hour away from Seoul by high-speed train. Daejeon University's dormitory Harmony Hall is a part of ongoing evolution of its campus since its beginning in the 1980s. University aimed for the students to gain broader pedagogical opportunities through living together as a temporary community within the campus. The given program is a dormitory for 600 students, large dining hall with 300 seats, and a student hub with various meeting rooms. We wanted to reconfigure often polarized individual versus collective spatial conditions in a dormitory, providing a full spectrum of communal experience to perform sensibly for students' daily lives. These range from minimum unit of private personal space to shared spaces with roommates, floormates, and dorm mates, ultimately extending to the entire university campus at the other end of the spectrum. The main campus level, situated at the mid-level of the mountain, is lined with the 4 to 5-story buildings. The dormitory is accessed at this level via pedestrian passage, lined with the tall cherry blossom trees, facing a steep hill with a 27-meter drop to the east. This dramatic topographic condition posed a challenge in density, leading to a compact yet complex 10-story single-volume structure with a central courtyard. From the main campus level, the building appears as a 4-story structure, respecting its surroundings. Located just below the 6th floor dining hall and 5th floor student hub, this allocates the 2 most public levels and programs positioned centrally within this 10-story building in section. Sandwiched between 4 private living levels above and below, although the elevators are located at each of the 4 corners, students can easily reach the public levels via stairs, as they are never more than 5 levels apart. The planned composition of standard double room of 2 occupants is reconfigured to be a more compact, allowing for the surplus of semi-private 3.4 square meter area shared between 2 units. Each new 2-person unit with a general ceiling height is divided into 2 distinct study and sleeping zones. The study area is furnished with a corner desk with viewing and ventilation windows for both, while sleeping area consists of private double-decker beds, each with its own ventilation windows as well. The newly revised double room configuration introduces an optimized 4.4 meter square wall structure module. The slight reduction in each unit size yields an increase of 830 square meter of shared space across 8 dormitory floors, private room floors. This allocation transformed the monofunctional corridor into a series of generous, undefined social spaces. Once the basic structure module was devised, an extensive study determined the best horizontal vertical organization. The steep hillside, this is how we developed the shape that fits to the site. And this geometry created 2 contrasting shared spaces, this sort of pixelated parallelogram. Along the east and west side of the courtyard, the basic room modules are arranged in a pixelated manner, while north and south side remain linear. The first shared space consists of alcoves, semi-private pockets along the straight north-south corridors. The second is more generous zigzagging sequence of shared spaces along the east-west corridors. This interior corridor recalls Golmokgil, the alleyways of old Korean villages, once an important social space for communities that have largely disappeared. In these undefined common spaces, civil social practice was learned through everyday negotiation with neighbors. Similarly, the dormitory's alleyway-like corridors connect kitchens, showers, restrooms, and laundry rooms. To enhance their communal living room-like quality, lockers are placed in the elevator halls on each other, allowing floor mates to switch into slippers before entering, as is customary in Korean homes. The site also shapes a building section, forming a pixelated parallelogram as well, stepping up from the campus's eastern edge to the main level. The structure creates terraces for everyday use. This echoes Daltongnae, which is called Moon Village, vanishing hillside community known for their shared open terraces. The living room that have quiet living floors that quite intimate, almost medieval quality with a sheer wall structural system. Presented in the next challenge is when it comes to inserting the large, airy, two-level collective space in between. At the same time, another hurdle was to preserve existing road that dissects the site at mid-level. We had to build two buildings at the top and bottom, then introduce 4 trusses to connect them and support the 5th floor student hub while keeping at the mid-level road operational during the construction. The student hub slab is suspended from these trusses, supported by 8 20-meter diameter tension columns. On the 6th floor dining hall, 3 27-meter trusses span the space, supporting the 4 dormitory floors above. This creates the most generous common space with expansive views that connects the campus and the mountain to the east side. This building attempts to systematize alleyways and moon villages, which are now nearly obsolete. We took this single building as a topography-specific agglomeration of urban conditions with full spectrum of individual and collective we value and miss. In Framptonian terms, maybe this could be understood as a megaform strategy when urbanism is not quite possible in this century. Next, I'll show you different systemic works on Jeju Island, the largest island in South Korea. Jeju Island was formed 6 million years ago by massive volcanic eruption, resulting in 2,000-meter high Halan Mountain. Unlike the much older hard granite-based peninsula, Jeju was known for its natural ecologies, including dramatic rock formations such as craters and world's longest calcite tunnels and so on. The island has a semi-tropical climate and is completely incomprehensive dialect language the most mainland cannot understand. By the time we received this commission in 2008, Korean lifestyle began to diversify. As 20% post-war South Korean urban population ratio peaked to 90% and began to stagnate around this time, Jeju gained popularity as an ex-urban exodus destination. It became a place for people to start a new life away from the cities or a frequent weekend getaway location. With this change, Jeju province began developing a special zone to attract clean industry, such as IT and BT industries, near Jeju University campus. This initiative aimed to evolve a region beyond its traditional focus on agriculture and tourism. 다음, which means next in Korean, was South Korea's first portal site on internet provider, and the main partner for this plan. Established in 1997, it's compared to Yahoo, maybe, because it's the first one, right? It launched in 1994. In a bold move, Daum made the decision to relocate its headquarters from Seoul to Jeju, making the first instance of inverse migration away from Seoul over the half century by nationally recognizing economic entity. This shift probably echoed the starting from the clean slate utopianism seen in the Silicon Valley in the 70s. However, in the case of Korea, a smaller country, somehow their eureka moment of, oh, let's work where everybody's vacate and take an occasional weekend getaway for urban stimulation in Seoul, 1 hour it was just proven to be a potent idea. When we first visited, we confronted the sloped tabula rasa-like dirt site. The site was along the main road, 800 meters long, with a 100-meter level drop, facing Hala Mountain to the south and the sea to the north, at an elevation of 300 meters above the sea level. For the first 350 brave Daum employees embarking on this utopian exodus, we had to demonstrate what is possible when leaving a hyper-dense city like Seoul. First, we had to find a strategy to develop this massive vacant territory to situate our first building. Two contrasting conditions were suggested, first with a linear urban zone, low-rise but dense area on the site along the main road. As a result, the remaining adjacent area in an irregular shape, will become a car-free rural zone for the sports, farming, and all sorts of other activities. Our building will be situated at the center of the urban zone. Rather than creating an iconic building, which was somewhat expected, we began imagining a new grammar for creating a unique work environment that could potentially be applied across entire designated urban zone. There are 5 structure modules, each with a continuous surface from vertical to horizontal, blending columns and beams seamlessly. These modules can be connected horizontally and stacked vertically, arranged simply or more complex, depending on the future needs of the site, like a growing infrastructure. Visionary artist Nam Jun-pae coined the term electronic superhighway in the 1970s, which was later appropriated by Vice President Al Gore as an information superhighway in the 1990s. Internet time, we thought our idea could be literally a physical manifestation fantasizing about a structure that could continuously expand like a flyover with 5 kind of reusable steel formwork on site of 800 meters long. However, after the budgetary investigations, and we determined it would be a much more cost effective to use less durable, yet still functional and reusable FRP formwork, since they had no plans to build more at the time. The first building, Daum Space.1, consists of 5-story workspace. It includes a large lecture room with distant ocean view, a restaurant cafe, various meeting rooms, and a recreational area with a game room, ping pong, and more. Surrounded by farm, tennis court, and small mound, created from surplus dirt excavated during the construction, restores the delicate landscape and the scenery. This was a reference to the 368 orums, which means parasitic volcanoes on Jeju Island. In fact, the building was even nicknamed 369th Autumn due to its stacked wedding cake-like structure with capes inside, which resembles an autumn. Our engagement ended in a way similar to what has happened Yahoo to Google, meaning that in South Korea, Daum with a neighbor, which is now very big. So the same year that building was completed, in 2010, KakaoTalk was born, which is like a WhatsApp, maybe, Facebook, quickly dominated the messenger market. In 2014, Kakao acquired Daum, but chose not to relocate to Jeju, continuing its operation in Seoul. So what remains now is an incomplete situation, yes. Next project, I guess number 9, so we're almost there. So, yeah. The next project on Jeju Island began in the same year. We completed Daum Space. In 2010, this is quite contrasting process. The site is the Seogwangdaewon tea field, adjacent to a nature reserve called Gojawal, a lava spill that created porous, rocky soil. This soil generates a humid microclimate on the island, supporting a unique ecosystem. However, this rocky soil was not suitable for a tea farm. Several years prior to starting a tea farm in 1984, the land has been used for pig farm to enrich the soil with pig manure. Over time, barns were added as part of this process. In 2001, once the land has become fertile, the pig farm was discontinued and the barns were replaced by a tea museum. The founder's dream was to nurture tea culture in Korea, where tea wasn't as prevalent as in countries like Japan or China. The original Osolek Tea Museum was designed by a local architect and completed in 2001. We completed 8 tasks by 2023, spanning total of 12 years. While the project is not extensive in scale, this has taken the longest time. If the earlier Jeju project is like inventing a new Lego set on a slope nothingness, this project began like discovering the last few missing puzzle pieces on a jigsaw puzzle. However, existing puzzle set, the surrounding conditions, whatever that is, also kept evolving, driven mainly by the quantitative demands from 700,000 visitors annually when we started to about way more than 2 million people today. So the process has been like an ongoing go game, much like the expanding the house in code terminology. This project didn't have a fixed master plan. We had to be in constant dialogue with shifting demands. We teamed up with the widely admired landscape designer Chung Young-sun, who marked her 50th year of pioneering career last year, celebrating several milestones along the way. First, she received the Jellicoe, Sir Geoffrey Jellicoe Prize in Landscape in Stockholm, and then also had a documentary made about her career titled Poetry on Land, and showcased a large retrospective at the Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art in Seoul called For All That Breathes on Earth. This exhibition will be featured in actually this year Venice Biennale as a collateral event. And her role was to restore and expand what exists on the ground before, while we carefully added small structures with her. So, in the first phase, we replaced the aging structures with new buildings, minimizing their interruption to nature. The old, underused pavilion was replaced by tea stone, tea ceremony classroom made of polished black concrete that shares the material quality of an inkstone on a slope. The choice references the nearby exile site of Chusa Kim Jung-hee, renowned 19th century scholar, calligrapher, and tea enthusiast. This tea field is also linked to the trail of Chusa's exile path. From the tea stone classroom, the view opens onto Gotjawal hillside. Beyond the landscape, at a distance of 40 meters and 3 meters higher, another almost identical building, the Innisfree House, overlooks this area. Ascending to the hill, one realizes it's quite different. 30-meter-long building shaded by chestnut wood screen and camphor tree. This building is also constructed on the site of old houses, and we allow also Gotjawal expand around it. And the next building is a facility for staff to rest and preparation, along with the public toilet. Rather than appearing as another building, it takes the form of the most common Jeju landscape vernacular, the black lava stone wall. When the annual visitors exceeded 2 million, we were approached with a request to expand Innisfree twice. Rather than adding new buildings at this limited space, we saw an opportunity to extend the existing structure, allowing them to grow organically, much like trees. As a result, the 30-meter-long building grew to 16 meters. Though it appears as a single structure, a notable difference is created in the interior. The wider spacing of the wooden beams and an adjusted mechanical system creating a more airy greenhouse-like atmosphere compared to the first half. The placement of the next building, the tea terrace, felt like a collective decision with the visitors, as it emerged in a spot where people naturally gathered, seeking seating tables with parasols and pergolas that become a building. Measuring 6 meters wide and 30 meters long, the structure has a deliberately low touchable ceiling with local cedar finish, allowing to sit modestly on the landscape. It ultimately formed an ensemble with a tea museum and tea stone, defining an expanded Gotjawal garden to a gentle ascent leading to the rooftop. The south, the additional support emerges, forming the underground level of the tea museum. Visitors experience as a non-building and more so as a part of the landscape. It primarily houses offices and staff lounges with the natural light. Previously, the rear end was a loading dock with the smelly garbages, trucks in and out, but we relocated the lower level, so allowing the actually backside to circulate. People can sort of move around freely. And then, lastly, the renovation of the tea museum. We are able to introduce new windows because the backside, the loading dock moved to lower level, so offering the vistas of the tea fields. But initially it was actually to upgrade this kind of hopelessly under capacity HVAC, but we also managed to create much larger volume and kind of responded to original architect's concept of a wheel-turn teacup space with the new windows. And I think it's upgrade and somehow this, yeah. But then, let me see. Okay, sorry, this was a little bit, yeah. And then during this process in 2017, we were invited to place another stone in our ever-evolving Go game, this time in a different tea field by same company, Hannam-daewon. Though located in Western Jeju in a 30-minute drive away, we consider as an extension of our existing Go board. Our task was to design a factory aimed at establishing an efficient production system to clients' in-house brand, Osolok. This system integrates every stage of production, from tea cultivation and harvesting to secondary processing and final product packaging. Previously, these various processes were spread across both Jeju Island and the mainland. Apparently, it's quite rare for a tea brand to cultivate its own tea when you think about this whole globalized farming situation. And also, since 2006, Osolok has been practicing rigorous organic farming method, known to be one of the largest operation of its kind. Creating a home for direct farm to final product system has long been their dream, and we are able to find our ghost stone location where an epic dialogue with the Hala Mountain and the sea would be possible. This 165-meter-long building presents itself as a modest, intimate one-story structure from western entrance facing Hala Mountain, gradually revealing its monumental quality as it opens up toward the eastern sea. From the southern side, the simple horizontal volume seems to casually disregard Jeju Island's gentle slope. The northern exterior reveals a production process inside with 2 loading docks, one for receiving harvest raw materials and the other for dispatching finished product. Since this is a food production facility, the interior space are heavily rigorous in its organization to avoid dust and bacterial contamination, arranging in a Fordian manner, so no visitors are allowed inside. Jeju Island's soil offers a rich spectrum of colors, from soft grays to vibrant ochre shade of volcanic tuff. So we collaborate with a local brick company to fine-tune cement colors and volcanic aggregate ratios, resulting in 9 brick variations to produce 200,000 bricks needed for the project. We created detailed drawings for the composition. Jay here, he worked on it, okay? It's kind of a, brick layering can be a sort of mediative, gen-like repetitive task, but it took on a color by numbers quality, and the precision wasn't rigidly required or noticed, so they seem to enjoy this process. And the brick layers, brick workers. And for distance, building appears simple, but up close, diverse spaces unfold both in and out. At the base, the red brick walls meet the ochre volcanic earth. Sometimes it meets the interior space with the kind of polished color that kind of continues the color outside, the brick color pavings, and so on. Since visitors are not allowed to go inside, we also incorporated windows that offer glimpses of 12 different stages of production, from raw preparation to the final product in storage. Connected by a covered loop, circulation across 2 levels. Some windows are paired with a simple ventilation system, allowing the aromas of roasting and blending. So it's actually the best smelling factory ever. You should believe. And while the Hannam Daewon factory is a single building designed all at once, it offers many different experiences in its own unique way. In contrast, Seogang Daewon was created with many buildings over a long time, yet has gradually been absorbed into ever-expanding web of passages, creating a singular, continuous experience. The premise of Hannam Daewon requires strict separation between interior and exterior, yet we managed to create an engaging experience, almost as if creating a movie with 12 still shots. At Seogang Daewon, the interior and exterior spaces often feel indistinguishable. After the most recent renovation and addition, I told the landscape architect Chung Young-sun that we hadn't done much, but that we simply follow her landscape work and added few roofs here and there. It is experienced as a continuous web of passages that weave in and out, rise and fall, widen and narrow, inviting visitors to walk or pause. The interior spaces vary in height, width, and shape, ranging from rectangular to round in diverse proportions. Changing light conditions guide one's gaze through an ever-shifting perspective from above, below, and directly ahead, while intersecting with both nearby and different landscape of the expansive bright tea field or secluded shadows of Gojawal Forest. That is the Lines project. And lastly, I'll actually try to make a summary of what I have said. Sorry to sit through it. It's only 30 more seconds, okay? So you have seen works. We kind of had a various interests that emerged from highly compressed temporal conditions, where everything might often appear as afterthoughts. This requires an examination from a cross-eye view. At times, we are compelled to create montages or explore stillness in movement and movement in stillness, or make specific future-proof attempt for temporary communities, even though it may turn into incomplete utopia. Nevertheless, we continue to play our Go game with ever-changing world around us, fermenting our ideas through actions. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. I know that we...
Slightly jet-lagged, okay? Still.
A lot of energy. Your talk shows us a kind of a very expansive, different kinds of projects, all at different scales, using very different materials. Different program, and yet it seems to me that one of the things that tie the work together is sort of this this embrace of a kind of very energetic way of thinking, but then also very open to improvisation. Whether that means, for example, a complete change in the direction of a project, or having to cut it back, or not knowing if it will go at all. So it seems to me like that you have been able to manage the kind of unpredictability of practice, particularly in the Korean context. So I wonder if you can share with us a little bit more about how that design process unfolds for you, because I do think that it seems like the nature of your practice is one that actually is very capable of very quickly, swiftly moving from one idea to another, and or shifting as necessary, because it's a tricky place to practice. That might differ from some of the other kinds of the practices from which you had your earlier days, and maybe you could tell us, or maybe they're the same. I'm very curious for you to reflect on that.
Yeah, I mean, we also, no, thank you for the question. It's also, this isn't like really quick thing, right? Because I mentioned some took 12 years, and this is actually, I kind of covered the project over 22 years. I mean, more recent works are there, but of course I didn't show everything, but I think it's also, we were very much interested in, very contained in a small country, but yet very dynamic, and we really want to engage in a various conditions that kind of also sort of forms new social conditions. So it's like, small to big to very fast project, like fast architecture. You saw the Jeju, the puzzle project, for example, but simultaneously also we explore the same island, and kind of, we didn't know, because we didn't know it would go on, and it might even continue in the future too. But this sort of givens, somehow we are attracted to very diverse conditions. So it's almost, I think now this, I don't know, the Korea or other countries, you might feel the same way, but you don't really have to go outside much to experience something foreign. Within your own small territory, there's, kind of enclaves of a different period or different sort of mentalities, and all that has been a very enriching, maybe, and we've been quite enthusiastic to engage in a very different sort of territories. So that's kind of our local practice in a way.
Yeah.
Local, in a way. Yeah.
Does that cause some conflict in the sense that, Koreans are, given the kind of context of the history, are sort of masters of assimilation.
Yeah.
And one could say that even you see moments of the qualities of practices that whether it was the embrace of modernism or other kinds of formal expression, the kind of onboarding of Western ideals is actually, Koreans are quite adept at this, at kind of very, very quick assimilation, maybe also by necessity. Could you say something about that? Because there's, I think we also can see in the work a kind of a hybridity that I think is really interesting.
I try to sort of highlight the Kim Jong-un French Pavilion, French Embassy, as that kind of a example, right? But I think it's Korea I think it's also very unique that until I came back to Korea, I think I kind of sort of characterize it as a sort of Bermuda Triangle of architectural discourses, where every influences comes in, but somehow it's kind of a free zone. I love the the Spivak, Gayatri Spivak calls it a affirmative sabotage can happen in a kind of in a very creative way. I think also the music that we played, Jang Young-kyo, this entire way of kind of inventing new sort of landscape that he can then maneuver has been that way, and also in a way the movie production has been a similar way also. I don't know, I mean, I kind of resonate more with these kind of other similar my generation of cultural production in Korea in that sense. So I don't know, I mean, it's I'm exposed myself here, so you can maybe give me more insight how it reads. But
because I want to make sure that we keep to time, I'd like to open it up very immediately to other questions from our audience. I think there are folks with microphones. Sarah.
Thank you, Minsuk. It was extraordinary as a talk. You may be jet lagged. I don't know what you're like when you're not. I thought I was really struck by the fact that you show and you gave us a wonderful history of Seoul in particular, and it's such an dense urbanity. And I was struck with all of the projects that, in a way, that urbanity is missing, that of the city. It's almost like you rid your projects of the car, and you create a mini urbanism within your cities that has the same intimate monumentality of the city that you point out in different spots, but somehow is always an island unto itself. And I wondered if you could maybe elaborate on that, or sort of maybe it's more an observation than a question. But I was very struck by that in every project. Extraordinary work, really beautiful.
Thank you very much. I guess you're talking about archipelagic sort of approach in a way.
Maybe maybe that's right, but
bringing glissant.
On the one hand you're very responsive to the urbanity. On the other hand, you create your own urbanity that doesn't have the car. That
car?
Is the automobile.
Automobile.
Sort of it's intimate and monumental in every project, but without a sense of the car or the street.
Interesting, you have an insight that maybe I don't have a car, I never driven myself, so I'm a walker, so that's. But I think I come from a generation, actually, I can say, because I just met with the Korean Harvard GST group, but I think the generation that kind of defines me was I come from like where North Korea was richer than South Korea until early 70s. So my earliest childhood was quite poor. I don't know, you can call it third world, but it's kind of like that. But I kind of grew up in a kind of a very, let's say, budget version of a unité d'habitation, let's say, next to cows and thatched roof houses and so on. And somehow this very quick transformation in this very new modern setting was really exciting for me. And that's where sort of modernity and this modern architecture was like there is a community there. There's like all this sweet favela. I mean, I talk about 달동네, 골목길, all that was quickly translated into very modern environment. Whereas later it became much more repetitive, and Gangnam was developed, and I think they have a very different mentality. Of course, I'm not saying the next generations are dehumanized or anything like that. They have their own humanity going on despite. Yet, I think for me, I really my work has been always this kind of a brutalist under the bridge, or these hardly any kind of a public space was there. But somehow I have a really great memories for it. So maybe you kind of observantly kind of see that aspect a little bit, but I don't know. I mean, thank you anyway for that. Yeah.
Hi, I'll follow up on the just deep appreciation for the talk. Is it on? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I just felt for every project, you gave us such a wonderful history lesson of Korea, particularly in the 20th century. And just, I really appreciated it as someone who has not been there. But it also made me wonder the role of history in your design process. Because it seemed like such an awareness of the history of each building, but also of urban spaces and urban types that you're sort of reconfiguring in your projects. Could you just share a little bit of the role history plays when you're designing a project?
Yes. Thank you for the kind remark. I think I touched upon quickly at the intro that when you go to beautiful site, you don't really question what happened there. You know, it's more you appreciate and how to fit in this, whatever you do and coexist, and this become like an inspiration, not to ruin it. Yet, most cases are like, what a mess, and how did this happen? And really, you know, you can also have a like carte blanche. You can do whatever because it's not going to be any worse. So there is a kind of a liberating aspect. But also, I think we become like a detective actually. So every project, how this came about. So I was explaining the power plant situation and how to make sense out of this history, and it's really a riddle. I mean, for me, that's what's been driving this thing. Not, you know, I'm nostalgic or anything, but that's like, you know, the Kobu's apprentice Kim Jung-up's work was about that, and but also it's really impossible to really have this grand narrative of encompasses our project. It's really at specific moment that you look back and project something, and it's always of that moment, you know. So that's another attitude we have. Of course, that's, I guess maybe I'm saying the obvious, but, and what else? History. So, and then I do have a historian that I work with, actually. I work with him for the Korean Pavilion. He's a kind of the most knowledgeable one. He's a historian who does the footwork, really. Look around like news, discoveries, and somehow he has been a very, An Chang-mo, Professor An Chang-mo has been a very good collaborator. So that's also, yeah, it's not a theory person, more about the footwork, archaeology, history. I think this is what, because we confront this thing, you know, and you know how these messy things happen, how this urban structure came about, and he always has an answer. So I mean, there are few pioneering people in that field. I mean, here is so much of that history is established, but you can see the urban substance there is really like a one bulgyo, you know. I mean, I don't even know what to call this kind of a cacophonous, like encyclopedic array of big and small and every style. And I think some, I don't know, from the West, the Japan, the fascination, they kind of glorified it, right? Kind of from the Roland Barthes or other, you know, but somehow it should be more than that. So I'm trying to also struggle with through buildings also when it comes to history. Yeah, but also, I don't know. Did I answer? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, Minsuk. Thank you for such a beautiful, beautiful presentation. I'm curious, it seems like you get a lot of inspiration through film and music, but I think particularly film in the way you talk about your work, but also in the way it seems the work is produced. But what's striking to me is it doesn't feel like the work is resting just on the metaphor between film and architecture, but somehow there's a kind of translation into the essence when you think about how movement might occur or like be affected through the way a space is kind of designed. And I'm curious if you could speak to how that translation works in your mind, where at some point you have to deal with the elements of architecture. Like we have quite different elements in the production of our craft than a filmmaker might have. And so I'm wondering, how does that translation between what is a very sort of dynamic approach to space making happen for you when you're dealing with something like concrete, which is by nature this very still material?
Interesting. This afternoon with the Korean student, someone also asked me about this little bit similar question. It was about the Lajute, whether how I kind of got inspired by Chris Marker's work, and It wasn't. I mean, it kind of we approach it in a skew way, not directly. You bringing it as a metaphor, even montage. Somehow, I later realized that we end up making, because it's just a boring daydreaming subway passage. So we wanted to make a very striking wake up, and you pass through, and there's something going on, and then without realizing, also the 20 years later, we're doing a tower with the. Somehow it would make sense, but it wasn't like I was inspired by Eisenstein's writing or anything like that. But I think film is quite interesting because I often like Serpentine, open work or this non-linear. I have like a Mulholland Drive version of my project, which is complete, non-linear, strange, dual way of accessing the building, or because I think it's also. I think a lot has to do with also three-dimensionality, the topography of the. I think what you saw is actually various, very three-dimensional conditions. Here I spent very short time, but stunned by the flatness of America. Whereas where I operate is like I walk into one building and then basement, but then it's actually 5-story above from the other side, or it has all this very multiple way of accessing and thinking about the space. And actually, I get lost when it's very flat, because I have to have this kind of a topography situation. So I think that also related somehow, maybe unconsciously, with the exploring quite unusual, because it is kind of there also. So it's not this grid or this Cartesian rationality. Although I like, we have developing some also interesting systemic projects, larger scale project. Probably I'll talk about it in next semester when I come back for MIT. But okay, Renee, it's not a B-side leftover project from GSD, but actually but we are quite obsessed with also this kind of very systemic way of looking at things, just to destroy it. Actually, somehow you set up something, and maybe I'll get to that, maybe more articulate. Next time, but I don't know.
You can tell us before you tell MIT.
Yeah. Yeah, but thank you. Thank you for the interest.
Hi, thank you for an amazing lecture. I think it was really interesting to listen to how you tell the story. I think the project has a very specific way of framing the story.
Thank you.
But I think it feels like the way you design comes from inside out. So there's a lot of like a way you approach conceptual, like power mediums of history, political implications, and like other mediums like arts and literature and movies, just like the previous question. But I think at a certain point, some projects, not all of it, some very strong formal logic gets prescribed and it kind of emerges. That feels like a big jump at a certain point. So I'm curious about your relationship to forms.
Form is every form is form for me. Even box symbol form is form, or twisted. I am very non-binary about this form issue, actually. So the formalist, I'm like, yeah, but it has a form, and I think I mean. So I think it kind of opens up a good sort of accepting position of different forms. I don't know. Am I making sense? And also, I consider form as more of a very. I think our project essentially is very relational, actually. So our building is not as a completed sort of autonomous entity. I never buy that, and it's actually in relationship with other things. So, for example, we had very kind of a restrained language for French embassy, because you have shining. Kobu apprentice is building there, and somehow we have to be like 4 times larger building, but somehow had to play a supporting role next to it. Somehow it's like somehow we have to find sort of engage with the generic context around it, for example. Whereas this little museum that we designed is kind of completely the opposite, because you have so many these boring same 12-story new cartoon world, same time built building, and we had to do something else. And it's always kind of kind of complementary, and it's always been a balancing act. So we kind of frame our building in a very contextual sense. But also context is not this old kind of a reactionary way, because in a way, a Seoul, it's really, context itself is like a freak show. Huh? you can't really, I don't know what, I mean, here it somehow it has there's a way been glorified by the outsiders as the sort of like otherizing or exotifying, and there are certain tendencies that give some freedom from other more controlled regions, like here, someone goes and from European country goes there, and somehow, I appreciate one hand, but I have to articulate better, but I think form comes into this kind of a complex sentiment that I had in this not yet quite articulated context that I'm operating with. But maybe you want to talk more specific, which project? Yeah.
I guess the project Minsuk Cho on campus.
Yeah.
It was kind of shocking to hear how you told the story, where as an outsider looking at the project, it has a very strong formal logic. I think it's the first thing I perceive it when I look at the project. But the way you tell the story, it has so much other layers that there seems to be a disjunction between how I read it as a visitor / observer of Flanur, but I don't know. It was I don't know where I'm going with it, but I think the form kind of arises in a different manner or a different way than how you describe the project.
I see. No, I had a different way of storytelling because I wanted to revisit it because it's an old project. We designed in 2007 and it was finished in 2011. So, but somehow I thought it just with all the time issue, I thought it will, also I'm making a set somehow, whether it worked or not, as a sort of a complete set of a talk today. So maybe it's, yeah. It's also architecture is not for storytelling, I tell you, I'm sorry. Huh? It has a use, and today, it's a school, so I prepared it, but I don't know. You can go experience, and you can do many different things with it. So it's just a one segment.
Okay, I think we're gonna let you sleep and relax.
I'm passing out. You can tell. Okay, I'm very sorry. Huh?
Thank you very much, Minsuk. Beautiful lecture. Thank you.